And this evening, here at the Tillman School of Business at the University of Mount Olive, we are conducting some presentations of cases that were examined by students in our MBA program, Business 670 Strategic Management. And several of the members of our class are here with us this evening, but some are not. And so we are recording this presentation, and we will also, during and after the presentation, open the session up for questions by folks in the audience. But those who are unable to attend will be able to do so by looking at this presentation in a YouTube video, which will be available 1 or 2 hours after this presentation ends. The topic of tonight's discussion is PepsiCo Corporation. And to get us started and introduce the presentation, we're going to hear from Kenesha Armstrong. Kenesha, I wonder if you would just take it away and get us started. Please tell me when you'd like me to flip the slides for you.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Yes, myself and my team, we have analyzed and we'll be presenting on the PepsiCo company. My team is made up of myself, Miss Almeida, Benefield, Miss Krista Barbie, and Miss Kanita Dye. You can flip.
All right.
What we'll be covering today is the background and mission, the environmental assessment, capabilities analysis, the goals, the strategies, and the implementation of PepsiCo's goals and strategies. And under background and mission, we'll be covering company information, products and services, the history of PepsiCo, and their mission. Okay. So I'll begin. PepsiCo is in the beverage and snack industry. It was founded in 1965. It was the result of a merger between Frito-Lay and Pepsi-Cola. The current CEO of PepsiCo is Miss Indra Nooyi, and she actually became the CFO in 2001 and became the CEO and the president in 2006. And this is just additional information on the PepsiCo company. I will discuss Miss Nooyi a little bit later because she is a very important part of the PepsiCo company and their success. Currently, as of May 2016, the current number of employees, 260,000. PepsiCo currently conducts business, of course, within the U.S. They are now conducting business in Russia, Mexico, Canada, the United Kingdom, and also in Brazil, China, India, Africa, and the whole Middle East. And currently, they have 700 manufacturing facilities, and their products are sold in more than 200 countries globally.
Right. PepsiCo is also prominent in several South American countries.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, because that'll be shown up under their
Oh, that was just a side comment. No, there's no reason to discuss it.
I'm sorry.
There's your next slide.
Okay. In this next slide, as we know, PepsiCo's organizational structure is a multi-divisional structure and is broken down by the regions. PepsiCo's current structure consists of PepsiCo, America's Foods, which under there is Frito-Lay, North America, Quaker Foods, North America, Latin America Foods, and then you go into PepsiCo America's Beverages, and then we have their international businesses, what Middle East, Africa, and Asia, United Kingdom, and Europe.
Yeah, later on in implementation, we'll be talking about the organization structure some more. But when you look at this organization structure and you think back to chapter, I think it is 13, you kind of wonder what kind of a structure it is. At first blush, it looks like a divisional structure. And then you realize there's a corporate staff and you've got an international division. Then you've got some sort of arrangement that looks geographic, but so you might even, as Kenesha suggested, describe this as a geographic organization. It's really hard to understand this organization sometimes. By way of example, down there in Latin American Foods, you've got more Frito-Lay, along with Quaker products and a whole lot of other stuff. So PepsiCo's organization looks nice and neat and clean and orderly. In fact, it's a hodgepodge. Okay.
Okay, and these are just a few of PepsiCo's products, well, their most popular products. And just to name a few of them: Quaker Oats, Cheetos, Lipton, Tropicana, Pepsi, Hackett, Mountain Dew, Doritos, you have Lay's, and Gatorade. And they have a number of other products, but this product list right here shows how PepsiCo has differentiated their products and how they implement their president's her theory of having products that are fun for you, better for you, and good for you. And, you know, that's what PepsiCo is known for in their differentiation, and it gives them a competitive edge to compete in both the food and snack industry and the beverage industry.
Very good.
And this chart here, it just shows the percentage of revenue for split up between the food and beverages for PepsiCo as a whole. And as you can see, they receive more revenue from their food products than they do their beverages. Next slide. Let's see. Yes, and this is a chart that shows the net revenues by region. And the thing to look at is basically they continue to lead, well, be one of the top leaders in the United States, while you can see they're still growing in developing countries.
Yeah, if we just sort of look at the organization chart and then this bar chart, of course, the bar chart is meant to look just like the organization chart, so we can see how important each one of these divisions is, right?
Yes.
And North American Beverages and Frito-Lay, if you just take the Frito and North American Beverages, you've got a big bunch of the action, don't you? And then down in Latin America, you got everything. And Asia, Middle East, and North Africa, you got everything. But over here in Quaker, that's a separate animal all by itself. And then we go to this geographic stuff again, and that Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa account for a fairly large amount of business. But the first and the last bar are related to products, and so is Quaker. And the others are related to geography, where all the products are sort of thrown in. Once again, the message here is that what you see is not what you get. You know, this is a pretty complicated organization. Would you like me to flip to the next slide now, Kenesha?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And this slide, this is just a timeline of PepsiCo's history. And for the next couple of slides, I'll really just be mentioning them based on the year. And later on in the following slides, I actually be going over what each of these events, how they affected PepsiCo, and why was it a big deal for them or a game changer for them.
Good.
So I'll begin with the 1965 merger that created PepsiCo. Without that, there would be no PepsiCo. In 1966, one of the big breaks was the introduction of Doritos to the world. In 1974, they also made a big move when they began doing business in Russia, and they became the first American consumer goods company to do business in Russia.
Kanisha,
Yes, sir.
There's something that happened in that year, actually the year just before, that was even more important than any of these steps in PepsiCo's history. It's a little known fact, but it's of critical strategic importance to PepsiCo. They hired me.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know how we missed that one.
Okay, well, I think we can get over it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, then and another thing that I didn't put on the slide because I was going to discuss this was them hiring their president Newey. That happened in 1994, as I stated a little bit earlier. Well, she actually started with the company as an executive in 1994. So then, as part up under her, I'm sorry, she was responsible for the 1988 acquisition of Tropicana.
Yeah, Mrs. Newey, as we all know, is a native of India, and she received her undergraduate degree in India. I think we probably have a slide on this, so I'm sorry I shouldn't steal your thunder here. But after she got her MBA here in the U.S. And worked in a consulting firm in strategic planning for a while, her first assignment at PepsiCo was as vice president of strategic planning, and she worked her way up from there. So one of the things that makes it fun for me to do this project with you guys is, since I'm a strategic planner by profession, is to look at this rather remarkable lady for all the reasons that she is remarkable, and then take a little bit of pride in the fact that many of the theories and the models that we talk about in this course are practiced with great proficiency by Mrs. Newey, also a professional strategic planner. Okay, shall I switch it? Want me to flip the slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And this is just a timeline for you. We also was responsible for the acquisition of Quaker Oats that occurred in the year 2000, and the acquisition of Gatorade in 2001. PepsiCo went on to acquire Naked Juice in 2006. They also acquired 66% of Wimbledon Dairy and Juice Company in Russia in the year 2010. And the most recent big event is their introduction of their new water, the water.
Yeah.
And I'll explain now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The acquisition of Wimbledon, actually, the final steps were taken in mid-December of 2010, and the business actually, became a PepsiCo operation in the first of 2011. The reason that could be significant is that there might be a single question in the final exam on this case, and it might say either 2010 or 2011. Strictly speaking, Wimbledon became a division in 2011. Kanisha's right, the deal was done in 2010, but in terms of actual operation, we're talking about 2011. And pardon me for breaking in again. I'll try to control that, but
No problem.
that's a little detail that sometimes becomes an irritant. Okay.
Okay, so now I'll discuss some of the events that you know, you just saw on the timeline and explain why they were big for PepsiCo. Well, the first one is, you know, self-explanatory. I think we kind of went over this. Without the merger, there would be no PepsiCo, and you know, they wouldn't be the successful company that they are today.
Okay.
The introduction of Doritos, it was important because now, even shortly after the introduction of it, Doritos became one of the fastest growing snack brands in their portfolio. So it kind of got the ball rolling for them in the food and snack industry. And PepsiCo's decision to go into business with Russia was important because it made them the first American consumer goods company to do business in Russia. So the fact that they were first, it gave them an advantage, you know, over other companies that may have wanted to come in later on. Even though, you know, eventually Coca-Cola came in, you know, and overtook PepsiCo for, you know, for a while.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Coke still, Coke actually still has the largest share in Russia insofar as carbonated beverages are concerned. But with the acquisition of Wimbledon, which includes, among other things, the number is foggy in my brain right now, but I feel like there's something like 1,100 branches. So it's kind of the McDonald's of Russia. It's a dairy store chain that is a bunch of convenience stores where they sell, among other things, Pepsi-Cola, needless to say, and lots and lots of food products. But it's just, there's nothing like it in the United States, but it's a cross between a convenience store, what do we call it, a Dairy Queen and a McDonald's. Ooh, that sounds terrible.
Okay, with the acquisition of Quaker, okay, let's see. Okay, I think I knew what I did. I went a little ahead and also included the acquisition of Gatorade, and with the acquisition of Quaker, because together is what really started building PepsiCo's portdio. For more
let me give you just a tiny little bit of help here. The PepsiCo didn't buy Quaker because it wanted to be in the cereal business. It ended up being in the cereal and the breakfast bar and the granola bar business as a result. But Quaker had a little property that PepsiCo thought would be kind of useful to them, and we'll get into that in strategy. But that little property is Gatorade, right? Quaker owned Gatorade, and that's why PepsiCo went off and bought it, because it was trying to do something else. And I'm going to shut up now because that's part of strategy.
Thank you for that. And this brings me to the acquisition of Gatorade. And basically, the acquisition of Gatorade and Quaker together, it gave PepsiCo more edge into the carbonated drink. I mean, the non-carbonated drink industry, as well as the food industry. And the acquisition of Tropicana products was big because at the time, let's see. Well, no, actually, the acquisition of Tropicana was the biggest acquisition of PepsiCo. I think even to this day, it was one of the biggest acquisitions for them.
Yes, it was. Oh, is that it? Okay. Yes, Tropicana, I believe, was even done before Quaker, and it was a monster acquisition.
Yeah.
Naked Juice?
Yes. Okay. The acquisition of Naked Juice is important because mainly because of now customer taste and customer want and needs of beverages has changed over the years. As we'll see throughout our presentation, the consumption of carbonated drinks has decreased and is steadily decreasing, especially within the United States. And more people are drinking, water, juice, and PepsiCo wanted to get more into that industry. So Naked Juice was a good acquisition for them, and it gave them, more. It added to their portfolio.
Right. Here we are with Windmill Date again.
Yeah, we basically already discussed
We've covered that, yeah. And later on, we're going to see how Russia's economy has been doing. When this deal was done, Russia was growing for a lot of reasons economically, not least of which was oil, because there's a lot of oil in Russia. As you may have heard, the price of oil has gone down since then. And so you can kind of imagine what might have happened to Russia's economy. Okay?
And
LifeWater.
Yep, that's the last thing. The introduction of LifeWater, and this kind of is in the same area of the Naked Juice. With more people drinking water, now PepsiCo decided to come out with their own water, pH balance with electrolytes, and it actually it added to their goal of at least 2/3 of their global beverage portfolio value, 100 calories or less.
Right, and as we go through the case, we'll be talking about differentiation, as Kenesha already has. And prior to this point, PepsiCo had introduced its own brand of bottled water, Aquafina. And when they did that, or after they did that, eventually Aquafina became more popular than Coke's brand, Dasani. However, there's another brand of water that's even bigger than both of those, and it is, it's the Nestle.
Deer Park?
No, not Deer Park, no.
Pure,
What?
is it Pure? What is it? Pure Life?
It's a European brand. It'll come back to me. But in any event, so here's PepsiCo number 2 with a strong number 3 in Dasani. So once again, differentiation. And Mrs. Newey decides, golly, bottled water is getting to be kind of a commodity. Wouldn't it be great if we had some kind of special water? And I've never purchased LifeWater, but I'm told by people that they really like the taste. It has just a tiny little bit of taste, and they also like the way that it's got this pH control and so forth. In any event, it's a differentiator. So in bottled water now, amazingly, PepsiCo has differentiation.
Okay, in order to define PepsiCo's mission, I define ABLE's model.
We need to hear you better.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're okay now. When you backed up, we couldn't hear you as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I utilized ABLE's model to define Pepsi's mission. And so what I identified was the three big components: the customer needs, the customer groups that they serve, and what unique, competencies they have.
What capability, what competences are required to meet those unmet needs? Yeah.
Okay, first I begin with the customer groups, and this pretty much has stayed the same for PepsiCo. Their primary market are young adults or teenagers, and these young adults and teenagers usually prefer fast on-the-go snacks and drinks, and even more drinks that hydrate, boost energy, for sports or other activities. And that's kind of where them utilizing athletes for marketing, that's where that comes in, so they can market to their target group or target customer. They also serve several markets, like online retailers, wholesale retailers, supermarkets, convenience stores, and of course vending machines. And some of the customer needs or the needs of the teens and young adults, as I think I mentioned a little in the previous slide, were fast, fun, and convenient snacks for people on the go. And more recently now is more geared toward healthy snack choices, to align with, the new healthy lifestyle that are trying to adopt, a greater demand for beverages that hydrate, boost energy, relax, refresh, or beautify. That's one of the reasons why there's a steady decline in the consumption of carbonated beverages. And their
Whoops.
customer needs also are to align with. I'm sorry. Hello.
Yeah, we're having a little difficulty with the signal, but you're still live.
Okay, I'm sorry. Align with new healthy lifestyles and social mindset changes that are recently occurring.
Right.
Hello?
We're still here.
Okay. I'm sorry, for some reason it keeps going out on me. Okay, so some of the unique competencies that PepsiCo has is they actually have the financial resources to support all of their marketing strategies. They have a great research and development team and planning that allows them to meet the needs of their customers. They have great media advertising, and as I mentioned a second ago, they heavily utilize athletes to market their products. They do a great job of market research, and where they, at least I know in Russia, they're a strong industry in Russia. They're developing in China, even though they're not where they want to be, but they still have a global footprint.
Yeah, I think, are you using an Apple iPhone by any chance?
I am.
Yeah, I think that may be part of the signal problem. Don't forget that this is not an exhibit that talks about PepsiCo per se. Abel's model is simply a device that enables us to describe the characteristics of the mission, to put it all together. One, what market is it that this industry or people in this industry are trying to serve? Two, what is it that they need that they don't have enough of or that isn't being met adequately? Even if some companies are trying to do it, it's possible to do it better. And then thirdly, what kind of competences are required to meet those needs? So although Kanisha was talking about the PepsiCo's unique competences, well, we have to remember that these are competences required of any competitor in this industry to meet those needs. Okay.
All right, so we are going to move into the environmental assessment.
Okay, thank you, Kanisha.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to move into our environmental assessment, and Almeida, that's me. I'm going to do that. Or section A of it, the economics. And what we're going to discuss in section A are the revenue generating countries and economic indicators. What we have to remember is that PepsiCo operates within divisions, and there are 6 global divisions. Again, it's the North American Beverage, Lay North America, Quaker Food North America, Latin America, Europe, Sub-Sahara Africa, or ESA, and you'll see it listed as such, maybe on a map or two. Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. This is just...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. This slide is just a representation of the revenue generated, the one with their food and beverage industry, which is located both in the United States and internationally. And then again, it just reiterates what Kenesha said in the beginning about the percentage. 42% of or PepsiCo's revenue comes from international, and 58, or the bulk of it, the United States. In there was supposed to be this slide that we somehow got lost in the shuffle. And what that slide represents are our revenue generating countries. China.
Oh my gosh, boy, it would be great to see that slide.
Yes. I inadvertently, with all of the editing.
Sure.
China, Russia, India, Mexico, and the European Union are our focus point for today's discussion.
Almeida, after the presentation,
Yes.
perhaps you could put that slide in where it belongs and send me the updated PowerPoint file, and it'll be that one then that I'll post to our Moodle shell.
Will do.
Okay.
So now we're going to move into our economic indicators. And what this one is going to be our GDP to PPP. And what that is gross domestic product against purchasing power parity. Parity purchasing power. I always get them mixed up, sorry.
That's correct.
And the GDP, PPP, well, GDP, we use the GDP, PPP to get a clearer picture because GDP represents everything in a dollar, and it's going to be represented in the dollar based on the country or the nation. And that can blur the picture because some areas represent their dollar being worth more than what it is. And therefore, and they do that so that you can look at the import exports. How much of something you can get out of the country, how much of something you can get into the country. So what we want to do is look at it, the GDP versus the potential consumption or the potential to consume, consumption potential.
You're doing a great job. Let me just help you round that off.
Okay.
But you know, Almeida's definitely got the right idea here. As she points out, when we try to convert Chinese yuan to dollars or European euros to dollars, whatever the currency might be, those conversions are done by bank exchange rates. But countries don't necessarily put their exchange rates where they reflect the true economics, that is the purchasing power of the currency. And so when we try to compare countries' economies by converting their values in local currency to US dollars, we get a really, frankly, an incorrect and a misleading picture. So economists have learned for quite some time now that the best thing to do is convert to purchasing power parity, meaning, and we still convert to dollars, but even US dollars are converted this way. And when we do, we get a far different picture than we just when we just convert from local currency to dollars using bank rates. So what we're looking at here is the real world. And sometimes when we see GDP simply or other economic data simply converted based on bank exchange rates, we get a very misleading picture. What we see here is the real world. Okay, Almeida.
Okay. And what we're doing here is we're comparing China, the United States, and the European Union. And we have to remember is that the European Union is a group of countries. So we're comparing that group, that bigger group, with single economies. And in this slide, what you'll notice is that China in 2000, when it was a growing nation, started behind both the European Union and the United States. However, if you watch it, it began to grow. And then in around 2013, 2012, it began to peak or spike rather. And that spike continued and surpassed that of the United States and the European Union. And again, when you compare that and you look at it, China being one economy surpassed an economy or a group of economies that's moving very quickly, and that's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, China is a growth economy. And that difference between China's economy and both Europe and the US gets wider over time because the US is a mature economy and it's just more difficult to grow at a rapid rate. China's growth rate is slowing down, but it's been fooling people lately because it's grown faster than expected. It grew last year at almost 7%, and it's expected to probably grow at about 7% again this year, as opposed to 2% in the US. So that's a growth market, all right. We care. Why do we care about that? Because PepsiCo, if it's going to be a player, is going to have to be involved in that market, right?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so then what we're doing on this slide is we are comparing our emerging nations. And this is going to be the Commonwealth of Independent States, which is what's left over from the Soviet Union, the ASEAN, which is emerging Asian nations, Latin American and the Caribbean, however you want to say it, Middle East and North Africa. And then what we did was we broke out India, Mexico, and Russia to just show their trajectory.
What's growing the fastest?
The fastest is India.
Mm.
And again, they started off kind of slowly, and then they hit a spike, and they are aimed or geared to surpass all of the nations.
Of these emerging nations.
Emerging nations, correct. What's also important here, and that's because we talked about this earlier in our history, is we are looking and watching Russia as well. PepsiCo invested quite a bit of money into Russia when we became the first nation, U.S. nation to do U.S. business to conduct business in Russia. But then in 2010, CEO Nuyi negotiated a deal with Putin to buy Will Bill Dan. I always want to.
What a goofy name that is.
And so then now that's the Europe's and Russia's largest organization or company. And so now we want to watch that and see how that plays out, how well that will contribute to our bottom line. Did you go backwards?
Did I go too fast? Okay.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. And then here is just another look at the GDP at the per capita rate. Again, we're looking at per person, what can we spend, or what are we going to, or per the population, what are we going to spend, what can we spend? And what we see is that while China has the largest population or economy, its standard of living or consumption potential is kind of minimal.
Yeah. GDP per capita is not an actual measure of how much each person spends, but it is a good barometer of consumption potential. And essentially, it simply is the value of the GDP divided by the population. But whereas China's economy is so much bigger than the US and Europe, when we divide China's economy by 1.3 billion people compared to the US 0.3 billion people, we get a much different answer. And as Almeida points out, the standards of living, the consumption potential in China, but we also see that it is starting to grow now, but it's nevertheless, it's a lot lower than the more mature countries. Now, since it's a large economy, you know, when we get into the marketing and the strategy section, the issue is, what do you do about that? Do you offer them, you know, the high price product, or do you offer them the volume, you know, the economy product? And of course, with lower consumption potential, it's more likely that we'll want to offer them products that are easier to buy.
And then again, this is just us comparing the emerging nations. And like I said, we wanted to watch Russia to see what it will do. And what we can see here is that its potential for consumption is much higher than all these other nations. Here we take a look at the unemployment rate of the major nations. That China has kind of been flatlined in their unemployment, where both the United States and the European Union had a spike in unemployment. And most of that was around the time of the recession. People lost their jobs, companies closed, things of that nature. And the United States, however, rebounded, and its rates are going down and evening out, whereas the European Union, they kind of continue to climb, and now they're starting to have a decline in that unemployment rate.
Of course, unemployment is an indicator of people's ability to take money out of their pocket and buy Pepsi and Frito.
If they're not working, they have less money to spend on discretionary items.
Exactly.
And commodities, for that matter. People lost their homes back then. So then we are looking at the emerging nations, and just an info in case people were wondering why are there only two nations on here. Information for the others are hard to find, and some of that is due to overstatements or understatements by government officials and the people who control that in that country and relaying that information. So we see here, oh, go ahead, Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so we see here, we were watching Russia before to see what they were going to do. And what we see is they have a high rate of unemployment. Some of that is due to some of the sanctions that are on Russia right now. And so they had a spike in unemployment like everyone else did around the time that the markets crashed. And then they started to come down, but they still are at an unemployment rate that is higher than that of Mexico's.
Yeah, when Russia was a bad boy and occupied Crimea, and then the Ukraine, sanctions were put on it. And at the same time, the price of oil came down, and oil is the #1 product that Russia is able to export to generate balance of payments. So a whole lot of things have happened in Russia, but long story short, its economy has declined and unemployment has remained relatively high.
Okay, we can go to
Okay. Almeida mentioned not being able to get unemployment rates for some other countries. The one that I believe she's probably thinking of the most is India. India's economic data are not trusted by authorities in the world. So although, and the new president, President Modi, has undertaken to clean up the economic data gathering and reporting. But the International Monetary Fund at this point will not report India's unemployment rates or its inflation rates because it doesn't believe them. And there's a whole lot of reasons for this, but government self-dealing, I'll call it, is one of the underlying factors, regrettably, but that is true.
And our next slide here, what we found was some information. We don't want to confuse it with the savings rate, but this is the savings rate based on a percentage of the GDP of all of our nations together. And And what this is showing, it's an indicator for economic growth. It shows the amount of retained earnings for both consumers and organizations and what is available for future investment. So the more we can save, the more we can spend on discretionary items like PepsiCo, fast cars, things of that nature. The less we can save, then the less we can spend on those discretionary items because we are so focused on buying our commodities and things that we must need in order to survive. You know,
you got the right idea here. As you say, this represents individual savings plus corporate profits, okay, which is another form of savings as well. So those two items combined as a proportion of GDP indicate how much capital is being generated by the economy and becomes available to invest in the country's industry, to reinvest in the economy. So that's not money that you and I use to go out and buy Pepsi or popcorn or something with. This is money these are savings that find their way into banks, and then that money is available to grow the economy. So which of these countries looks like it's generating the most money to reinvest in its economy?
China.
Bingo.
Yep, they're saving at a very high rate.
Right.
And most of their saving, like you were saying, it was made up of both personal and corporate. But in China, the majority of theirs is going to be corporate savings because individuals don't have a lot of personal savings. For sure.
So these are retained earnings, whether they're personal earnings or corporate earnings. This is the retention of earnings so that those earnings can be turned into new capital. And it looks like China still has a lot of powder, a lot of gas in the tank.
Okay. And this is just a representation of the inflation rate in the United States, China, and the European Union. Essentially what the inflation rate tells us is the higher inflation, the less dollar we have, the less dollar we can use to buy. It means there's less money to spend on those discretionary items, less money to spend on our Pepsis, our Fritos, things of that nature. Because we are holding it to buy, pay for our necessities.
Okay.
And this slide here is same principle, just looking at, oh, you didn't flip it.
Flip it? Okay.
Yes. Same principle, just looking at our emerging nations, India, Russia, Brazil, Mexico. And again, the green line is Russia, and we can see that their inflation is fairly high, really high, in comparison to the other nations. And again, that's because of what is going on in their economy.
Okay. By the way, India's inflation rate's pretty high too.
Yes.
And
and it's actually surpassing.
That reduces the consumption potential because people, as you have told us, have to pay more for the things they can't do without. And that leaves less for them to buy things that they can do without, like soft drinks and juices and Fritos. Full disclosure, Frito was my first client when I was an internal consultant at PepsiCo. So I just always talk about Frito. I can't resist it.
Okay, and then this graph is going to be the personal savings rate of the United States. And what's interesting in this graph is that in the 80s, Americans were saving at a high rate. Americans were savers. And then as time progressed, we had the crash of the stock market and some other issues that brought us up into like the mid 90s, where we became spenders. We started not saving as much and spending, but then that spending became, unsustainable. So then we had to start financing that spending with debt. So you can see that we had a peak in the early 80s, and then we steadily declined. And then around our recession, savings were low. But then around 2010, you see a spike, and then again in 2012, and that gives us a false sense of security. It has us thinking that all of a sudden Americans started saving again. But the reality is that we did not. We could not. What happened was banks started calling notes, reducing credit lines, closing out credit lines. So then it looks like people were saving and not spending, but what happens is there was a reduction in their ability to do so.
Very nicely done, Almeida. Yeah, this is the portion of disposable personal income, which is your take-home pay. It's salary less income taxes. So it's the portion of disposable income that is not spent. And that's of course, that's saving. And as Almeida has pointed out, over the long term, we just feel like spending more than saving.
Okay. And then this is the other side of the coin. This is looking at the debt to GDP percentage. We were talking about how we were savers and then we became spenders and then we did that on credit. This graph is just a pictorial of that. We look at the different countries and see what percentage consumers are in debt. Netherlands has a high debt percentage of 115%. Denmark is at 129. Then we can look at some of these emerging nations and we see that Mexico has a debt percentage of 7%, Russia 16%. So these people are spending less on credit. They are maybe not spending at all or spending with cash only.
Banks won't give it to them because they can't pay it back.
Absolutely. Okay. And then we're just going to do a quick summary. We talked about those indicators, gross domestic product, purchasing power parity, which measures the potential for people to spend money. And gross domestic product is just a measure of the health of the economy. Essentially, it comes down to the more people are able to earn, the more they will have for discretionary spending once commodities and necessities are paid for. It is the discretionary funds that businesses, including PepsiCo, are competing for.
Purchasing power parity per capita measures consumption potential. Little edit there on the fly. Okay.
Thank you. And then continuing that, what we noticed in our presentation is that India is the exciting market of the future, while China is the exciting market of the present. We have been watching China. That has been where the movement has been, and now it's shifting to India, so we're going to watch that and see what happens. India's population is on pace to exceed that of China's. Pepsi, like I said, Pepsi should continue to watch this market and offer products that speak to or cater to the taste of this economy. India's population has discretionary income. What they do have, they are willing to spend on PepsiCo, which is represented later because PepsiCo is the #1 carbonated beverage company in the country. So much so that when people think of carbonated beverages or they ask for them, they use the generic term as Pepsi. Give me a Pepsi. Versus here in the United States, we say, give me a Coke. China's consumer economy is rising rapidly, while India's is also rising, but from a much lower base. India's consumer economy is much smaller than that of China's. And again, it's on the move. So we want to watch that and see what happens.
I love this first phrase. India is the exciting market of the future, while China is the exciting market of the present. I'd say that really sums up the classic growth story. I'll put this back where I found it, but boy, that's really a great phrase to sum up the rapid growth markets that we look at for planning purposes.
Okay. Now we are going to move into the section B, which is the markets, and Ms. Patrice is going to carry us through this section.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Which, Dr. Roney, you know me as Kanita, but for our market.
Hi, Kanita. Nice to see you again.
Yes. So for our markets, we'll start off with the global position of all of our businesses, all of our industries, and we're #2 right now for beverages globally. Globally, we're #1 for snack foods, and we're number 1 in America for nutritious convenience food.
Okay.
Okay, so this is our mix of revenue by division. So we've got North American beverage, which we saw before. That's our moneymaker. Next is our Frito-Lay. And then the rest follow behind. We can go on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, now this is the global soda consumption versus the GDP per capita. So as you see, in the US, we have a high GDP, and we also have a high consumer rate. However, in China and Switzerland, they have a high GDP, but a low consumption rate. And let's see, Mexico, they have a low GDP per capita, but they have a high consumption. The same thing with America.
Yeah, really remarkable. Mexico, as it turns out, by some measures, has the highest. Now, this slide indicates that USA actually has the highest consumption per capita, but some surveys actually have Mexico consuming more carbonated beverages and this is carbonated beverages per capita than the United States does. But they, as you can see, Mexico, Argentina, and Chile are way out of line. They're exceptional consumers. So you can bet that Coke and PepsiCo just you know, they really want to be in Mexico and especially these two countries in South America.
Yes.
You bet.
Okay. So as we were talking, we have to know where the people are if we want to market to them and have them as potential customers, consumers. So in 2016, as we said before, China is our leader. India is coming up as a close second. But if you look forward to 2050, India surpasses China by boatloads, and China actually levels off.
Right.
So that's the reason why the focus will be India going forward. Because as the population grows, so does the possibility for new customers.
Another rather interesting number is Indonesia, which is the largest of the ASEAN nations, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And for that, a lot of folks missed that one because the individual countries are big, but they don't, their true size isn't appreciated until you throw them all together. It's Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Singapore. And recently, South Korea tends to get thrown in there, although that's not Southeast Asian. But you can see that Indonesia grows to the same size as the United States.
Yes.
And that's quite remarkable. That's really rapid growth.
And Nigeria also comes up. That's the reason why PepsiCo is focusing on India, Africa, and Latin America.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, so soda used to be the drink of choice. However, people's lifestyles are becoming healthier. So soda and juice consumptions are both down.
What a slide that is. Wow. I love that term, spilling.
Yes. Okay, so people are looking for healthier options. This is the opportunity that PepsiCo is capitalizing on with their new product offerings like KeVita and Life Water. Because if you look, by 2020, look at the consumption of the kombucha, which are the healthy drinks. Consumption is going way up.
Way up. Yep.
And water. So back in 1986, people were drinking about 5 gallons of water. Now, well, as of 2016, people are drinking 39.3 gallons of bottled water. So we're not talking about water out of the tap. We're not talking about when people are refilling their bottles. We're just talking about straight bottle consumption.
Hey, Kanita, can we take a quick break? I got to go to the bathroom.
Yes. All this water.
Okay.
Okay. And here we are as far as our snack foods. Pepsi owns 10, well, they own 9 of the top 10 snack products. in the world, which
Isn't
are,
that something? That is what we call dominance.
yes, the only one that PepsiCo does not own is Pringles.
Wow,
And that's
that is overwhelming. We'll see more about market share and growth and all that as we move through this presentation, but just don't ever forget what you see on this slide. This really is a testament to just how much PepsiCo has accomplished in the snack food industry.
It sure is. I have a 16-year-old in my house, and I tell you, every snack that we buy is on this list. So it is remarkable.
It is.
Now let's see. In 2016, sales to Walmart stores, including Sam's Club and Walmart, represented about 13% of the total revenue of PepsiCo. Now, with the emergence of places like Whole Foods, Sprouts, Fresh Market, as they're coming up, PepsiCo is actually offering more product lines that will be that they're able to sell as health foods.
Because they're good for you and better for you.
Yes, like Kavita and Sabra. Now let's see. Customer appeal by age, which we're going to find out later on, is not necessarily true. Everybody likes all of our Fun For You brands, which is our Pepsis, our Mountain Dews, our Doritos, and our Lay's. Our Better For You brands, like our Propel, our Life Water, our Stacy Pita Chips, and our Baked Lay's. And our Good For You, our Kavitas, our Naked Juice, our Quaker Oatmeal Squares, and Sabra. With over 102 brands, PepsiCo has something for everyone. Okay, with the market conclusions, PepsiCo currently operates in 2 major markets: non-alcoholic beverages, which we're currently number 2, and snack foods, which we're currently number 1 in both salty snacks and healthy convenient snacks. PepsiCo products appeal to almost every age group, from toddlers to geriatric. PepsiCo is in a great position to capitalize on the healthy food and drinks demand with the healthy food retailers. Pepsi product lines have been expanding to include more healthier choices while maintaining the brand loyalty established by their brands Pepsi and Frito-Lay.
Great summary.
Okay, so if we take a look at all of our carbonated beverages, as we said before, they are declining, but there's still some pretty big money makers. So Coca-Cola has the biggest market share because their brand value is $67,749,000.
Just add 3 more zeros, about $68 billion.
Billion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, bear in mind, this is the value in media. I mean, the brand value goes. We're not talking about how many bottles of Coke are being bought here, but
we're talking about all of the proceeds that come from this particular brand, all of their media, all of their sports things, everything.
You betcha. Yeah. Well,
but Pepsi does have 4 major products in the top 10, well, in the top 15. So that cannot be discredited either.
That's right.
Now, as far as snack foods, Pepsi is the big it's the biggest one. It takes it all. There's no competition. It has more than 50% of the snack food market. We don't even have a real competitor. I mean, Kraft is there, Kellogg's is there, but just barely.
Right.
Okay, the same thing with our healthy convenient snacks. PepsiCo has 31% of the market share, with General Mills at 24 and Kellogg's at 22. But those product lines are expanding as we're moving a little healthier.
Yeah, this is getting to be a very competitive market.
Yes, it is. Okay, so we'll go into Porter's 5 Forces, which tells us the profitability of an industry. Let's see.
The profit potential and strategy priorities. We use Porter's model to tell us how attractive an industry is because of its profit potential. And as we go through this model, we want to remember that it applies to the whole industry, not an individual company that we're looking at. And based upon the results, we get some insight into what the priorities for strategy ought to be as well.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll start off with the supplier power. It's low. There are many suppliers in the market with low switching costs. Threat of substitutes is extremely high. Many new snacks and drinks are on the market, both healthy and not so healthy, coffee, tea, etc. For customer power, it's high because it's easy for them to switch, and there's so many different rival products. The threat of new entrants is low. It's a mature, both the snack food and the non-carbonated, the non-alcoholic beverage spaces are both
hard to get into.
And so they're hard to get into because there's some pretty big players. And the current rivalry is extremely high in beverages and snacks because all of the competitors have broad product lines and product loyalty. Because Coke drinkers only drink Coke. Pepsi drinkers only drink Pepsi. If you're addicted to Mountain Dew, that's what you reach for.
Yeah. Let me give you just a little additional information here, if I may. First of all, the Porter is I've attended some seminars with him, and I can tell you, he's just about retired, but he's almost a genius. Almost in Einstein fashion, he dreamed this thing up without doing any research. This was pure theory to him when he published it in 1978. And subsequently, researchers went out, and lo and behold, they found out that Porter was right. The strongest force on this diagram is current rivalry, and you can make a graph. And as rivalry goes up, profitability of industries measured by rate of return on invested capital or operating profit margin goes down, and it's a very tight fit, quite remarkable. All these other forces around current rivalry that tell us how the profit potential could change in the future, and so we got to look at the current profit potential, and then we got to look at how profit potential could evolve over time. And Kenita has diagnosed it just right here in terms of their relative strength. The one thing you want to bear in mind about customer power, though, is who exactly is the customer? And
it's our retailers.
Yeah, it's not Joe Smith.
Go on to the next slide because the next slide is my
slide. Okay, but we need to bear in mind that the customer is not the consumer, but it's the one that PepsiCo sells product to. Okay.
Oh no, the next one was
the
five forces. Yes, and see there it is. The industry's perspective, profitability. It provides the priorities for our strategy. And for this one, it's responding to strong forces that can suppress the profitability. With rivalry, substitution, and bargaining power of the consumers high for both non-alcoholic beverages and snack foods, PepsiCo must keep the prices, well, not necessarily low, but they have to keep the quality high.
Yep.
They really can't, the prices is not really the concern, it's the quality. Pepsi must continue to bring new product lines to the market. In essence, PepsiCo must be the substitute.
Right. When the threat of substitutes is high, there's only one strategy that is available, and that is you got to be the substitute.
Yeah.
And back to this point that Kenita and I were talking about a minute ago, people almost invariably, when they look at this case, they think of the customer as the consumer, the ultimate consumer. But as we'll hear in strategy, PepsiCo realized that the customer is that retail grocery store chain, the convenience chain, the quick service restaurant chain, and so forth. They're the ones that PepsiCo deals with, as well as the bottlers for that matter. And so you really have to look at the distribution channels to understand just what it is when we say that the buyers have power. And they really do in this case.
Yes, they do. Okay, so next we have the PCG matrix. And PepsiCo has a lot of cash cows. we've got Lay's, we've got Pepsi, we've got Tropicana. But we only have a few stars. We have the Naked Juice and the Gatorade. We do have some question marks that we're developing, like the Kavita, the Sabras. But Pepsi needs more stars. So, and I also threw in some of our competitors, like our Keebler, our Pringles, which is their cash cow. Vitamin Water is a star for Coke. And then, of course, we only have, well, I was only able to identify one clearly identifiable dog, and that's Powerade.
Yep.
So, okay. Let's see. So Pepsi, Quaker, Tropicana, and Frito-Lay are all of our cash cows. The profits come from those products, and they fund our stars and our new ventures. Gatorade, Naked Juice are stars. Their profits and product offerings are extending. Every new week, it seems like they have a new Gatorade product, whether it be a bar or a different drink or whatever. PepsiCo has many ventures on the way that are becoming stars, like Sabra. Sabra has really, really taken off. So has Life Water and the Starbucks ready-to-drink products, along with the Kavita. Kellogg's and Coke have cash cows, stars, and new ventures. However, Coke is the only one that's holding the dog. So it needs to dump it off, get rid of it, take it off the market, repurpose it. Okay, so for both of our industries, which is the non-alcoholic beverages and snack foods, they are both in the mature phase. However, some of our products are in different phases along this line. Like we have our Gatorade, which is in between our growth and our shakeout. Let's see, who else do we have? Oh, Tropicana is kind of in the shakeout because they're coming along with some new things like the Grove Stand, and they're coming up with some healthier options because people are shying away from all the sugar. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let's see. These are our critical success factors. As far as this goes, we'd say that Kellogg's is our biggest competitor because as far as leadership, we have Mrs. Nunez, and she is excellent. Research and development, we have a diversified research and development that are pushing out products just as quickly as possible, along with our innovation. Our distribution chains, we have control over our distribution chains, and that's excellent. Let's see, advertising and marketing. Now our financial health, we have a little bit high leverage, so that's not too good. So our total score ended up being a 4.2.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Whereas Coca-Cola ranks at about a 3.8. Their financial health is a little bit more stable than ours, but their leadership is not. Their research and development is not as good as ours. Now, our biggest competitor as far as snack foods would be Kellogg's, with General Mills not that far behind.
Good point.
We can go on to the next one. Okay, and these are our conclusions for this particular section, which is PepsiCo operates in two mature industries, both the non-alcoholic beverages and snacks. Rivalry is intense in both categories. The barrier to entry are high, so the threat of new rivals is low. Only large companies are able to contend for industry leadership because costs of product development, advertising, distribution are all extremely high. Product diversification is very necessary. Differentiation is essential. PepsiCo is achieving this objective with its good for you and better for you categories.
Okay.
I'm going to pass it on off to Krista.
Yes.
That was a really good review. Thank you, Kenita.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to do the capabilities analysis where we're going to look at the financial trends, the strengths and weaknesses, and just an overview of the organizational structure. And on my trend charts, I put in Mondelez and Coca-Cola, although I'm just going to focus on Pepsi since that's what our company is our main focus. So if you see the sales, obviously it was low during the recession. you can see where it picked up in 2010, and that was due to PepsiCo acquiring the Pepsi Bottling Group and Pepsi Americas. Profit margin dipped in 2010.
Also due to the Wimbledon expansion, you've got a 2-year growth period there. And remember, Wimbledon was acquired essentially at the beginning of 2011.
Okay. Profit margin dipped in 2010, which can be attributed to the merger charges that were related to the acquisition of those companies. Let's see. And this can also affected ROI as well. And then return on equity increased dramatically in between 14 and 15, which, yeah, that's all on that one.
I wonder why that great big spike in return on equity occurred. Maybe we'll learn when we look at the next chart.
Yeah. Let's see, long-term debt increased, which shows that they utilize more debt to fund their growth. And the share equity decreased from 13 to 14 due to the repurchase of stock.
Right. So when the denominator got lower due to the stock repurchases and the capital, so for return on equity, okay, we're still making the same profit, but the equity went down when we had a stock buyback. So as a result, the fraction return on equity went up. And we know that invested capital is made up of debt plus equity. And we can see that debt went up substantially, especially when we did that Wimbledon and the bottlers acquisitions. And yet debt at one point went down due to the buyback. So maybe you can tell us what happened to leverage.
Yeah, the leverage increased because the risk went up and equity went down due to the stock repurchase.
Yeah, so the proportion of debt to the total of capital. See, capital stays about the same because while one component goes up, the other one goes down. So it stays about the same, all right, but the proportion represented by debt goes up over 70%.
Mm-hmm.
That's getting into pretty risky territory.
Yes.
Okay.
And this just shows leverage in a different way. It just shows it in the pie chart from 2007 and 2017. So in 2007, the leverage debt to equity was 80-20, and in 2017, we were at 71 versus 29%.
Oh, that's right. You don't want to go over the others.
So just the analysis or just the takeaways, the sales and profit fell during the recession. They acquired Pepsi Bottling Group and Pepsi Americas in 2009, and also Wimbledon in 2011, which I didn't put that on there. The profit margin is 21% in 2017, which shows PepsiCo is pretty efficient in controlling their costs and expenses. Their profit margin is lower than Coke, which I will mention this, due to the fact that PepsiCo makes baked products, which require bakeries that are close to served markets. And Coca-Cola is far less asset intensive because its primary product is beverage concentrate. PepsiCo's ROI is pretty equal to Coke, and that's phenomenal due to the fact that Pepsi has so many more assets compared to Coke. And I already mentioned that long-term debt has increased and the financial leverage.
Yeah, for folks that may be, it's late and it's always hard to stay alerted at this time of night. But Krista's made a very important point that could slip by you. And it's this one here. Let me sort of highlight it for you. If I can just get a nice color here. And the doggone, there it comes. No, it won't. Oh, there we are. Let me give it a go. Make it stand out somehow so that it's there we are. To make the classic beverage, Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola, is made simply with a concentrate. It's either a powder or a syrup. The powder gets shipped to bottlers in great big drums, and that's it. That's all Coke produces, and that's all Pepsi-Cola produces, unless one of them produce it as a syrup to go to the dispensing machines in fast food restaurants and other restaurants. Okay, that's it. And what one concentrate plant can serve dozens and dozens of bottlers. So it doesn't take a whole lot of cost, and they've got a captive customer, so their prices provides them with really rich margins. And when you get into snack foods, you've got bakeries, and these bakeries have to be close to every served market, because if you ship Frito very far, the cost of the transportation can be more than the cost of the products in the bag. So you got to have these plants real close to the markets, and they've got lots of overhead costs. You got to buy everything from cornmeal to bags and pay the people to do the work. You got to have a conveyor system, and of course you got to have a building to put them all in, and you got to have the trucks to deliver it to the grocery stores. So your overhead costs are a lot higher in the bakery industry. No surprise, the gross profit margin is a lot lower than in the beverage concentrate business. Coke is primarily engaged in making beverage concentrate. PepsiCo does that too, but then they also have this big bakery business. And so what you see in PepsiCo's profit margins is an average of those two product lines. And that's why PepsiCo's operating margin looks to be lower than Coke's. But it's not if you were just to compare Pepsi-Cola to Coca-Cola. All said and done at 21%, that's not a bad operating margin at all. I've been in a lot of businesses where I would have killed to get an operating profit margin of 21%.
Okay, so some of PepsiCo's strengths are their media advertising. They have a lot of high-profile sponsorship deals with a lot of celebrities in the NBA, NFL. They have a diversified product portfolio, so they have beverages, non-carbonated beverages, and snack foods. They actually have research labs that contain physicians and nutritionists that are helping with their product line for the healthier options. They have steady leadership at the top with Adrian Newey, and they're shareholder friendly, so they have dividends and stock buybacks. Their weaknesses, the soda consumption is on the decline. A lot of people now are focusing on the healthier options in that market, and they have emerging market exposure, so the economies of Russia and India both are weak.
All right.
And this slide was shown earlier, the organizational structure with PepsiCo, America's Foods, America's Beverage, and International, but that will be broken out further in the implementation section.
Okay.
And I'm also going to do goals. So we'll look at the goals hierarchy, our value line financials, competitive position, market position, and some recommendation. So here's our goals hierarchy. PepsiCo's risk is high, but it's acceptable. Our financial condition, while not as good as in the past, it is acceptable. Our favorable market, PepsiCo's U.S. snack and NCB market positions are strong. The carbonated beverage position isn't strong in some countries. And long-term growth can be realized by developing new markets and healthy products.
Right. For those who want to know what NCB means, it's non-carbonated beverages. Okay.
So once again, sales, we have, I've compared them all, but I'm just going to talk about Pepsi. So the sales, operating margin, and ROI are all increasing, while return on equity is decreasing, which can relate to, and on the next slide, the long-term debt coming down.
Right, and as the equity rises, it's just hard to have equity growing at this rate. Remember that return on equity is a growth rate. It's net income divided by income at the beginning, by equity at the beginning of the year, because the way equity increases is by the retention of earnings. And it's only after that, of course, you might pay dividends to bring equity down further. You might buy back stock to bring it down further, or you might sell stock to make it go up. But it all begins with earnings and the retention of earnings. And so return on equity is a growth rate. And if you just think practically, look at the growth rates that return on equity indicates. You know, it's wonderful that you've got a 60% growth rate in equity or thereabouts, but that cannot go on forever, can it? I mean, that's just by retaining earnings, your denominator is going to get bigger. So if you just, you know, screw your head on straight and think practically, you know that rate has to come down. What surprises me is, I believe Krista used Value Line's estimates. Is that right, Krista?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what surprises me is that Value Line is estimating that still at 2021, you know, equity is growing at a 50% rate. Just between you and me and the fence post, I don't buy it for a minute. I think PepsiCo is going to grow their equity base, and they're sure they're going to pay dividends, but that equity base is going to grow up fast enough so that the rate of return on equity is going to eventually gravitate back down to something like what it's been in the past. But if you can hold 30 or 35% return on equity, you're doing just fine for the shareholders.
So as I mentioned, long-term debt is coming down, and share equity is increasing, and the leverage is coming down, which we need that to crash.
Yeah. Okay. And the reason it's coming down, remember, these are goals now. Okay. So it's not, you know, you're saying it's coming down, but you know, we assume here that this is what PepsiCo's management wants. These are goals. This would be our idea of what we think PepsiCo's management views as standards for success, right? That's what a goal is.
Right.
So in essence, Krista has told us that Value Line has given us an estimate that leverage is going to come down to 50%. And you wonder, you know, if you're Indonuyi, do you consider that to be a standard for success when interest rates are rising? What do you all think? Anybody at all? Nobody thinks anything? I would hope that PepsiCo would get its leverage down a little lower than that.
Yeah, 50% can go, we can definitely go a little bit lower.
Okay, so this is a financial goals table, and it just kind of recaps just some of the information that we looked at. But some takeaways from this is that sales increased by 17%. This is the projection for the next 5 years. Debt will decrease by 39%, and equity is going to increase by 38%. So some non-financial goals, the market share. Just this is looking at current market position and the intended market position where we want to go. In the current market for beverages and snack, or in the United States, we're ranked second in beverages and number 1 in snack. In Russia, number 2 in beverage, 1 in snack, and so forth on down the chart. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see where we want to become or maintain our figures. We obviously want to be in first or maintain our position.
Good chart.
The competitive position, we want to increase market share in developing countries while continuing to development in emerging companies. Replace Coca-Cola as the leader in consumer beverages, and successfully adapt to the rapidly changing customer tastes around the world. Some recommendations would be to expand target consumer groups to focus on the aging population to gain a larger market share. Get more involved with social benefits in developing countries, and turn marketing attention to developing countries as Western countries such as the U.S., are seeing a steady decline in the consumption of carbonated beverages.
Maybe that second bullet is more an issue of implementation rather than a standard for success. You know, goal being an end point. You know, it's. I can certainly see that being more involved, and Indonesia certainly has been. Would put the company in a good position socially to be accepted and for its brand to be appreciated more.
So now we're going to look at strategy. And I think that's Almeida.
Sure.
Who's up?
Almeida.
Oh, okay. Hi, Andy.
Hey, how are you? Again.
Here we are.
So we're going to look at strategy, and in this section, we're going to look at differentiation, capabilities and resources, integration, related diversification, unrelated diversification, our ANSOPS model, and basic strategies. So here we're looking at our strategic objectives. And of course, number one is to increase our market share. And we are looking to do that in emerging countries. We want to continue to dominate India as the number one carbonated beverage and snack food company. We want to take advantage of our brand loyalty, which we developed from being the first U.S. country allowed to conduct business in Russia. We know that Mexico's economy is starting to grow, so we want to get in on that. We stated about the ASEAN nations and how we want to be a part of that development and growth. And Pepsi has partnered with Suntory, forming Suntory PepsiCo in Vietnam. And they offer one carbonated beverage, which is Pepsi, one energy drink, which is Sting, 2 flavors of Aquafina, 3 flavors of Lipton tea. But the interesting thing about Suntory PepsiCo is it's also a healthcare company that kind of focuses in on helping the citizens of that nation stay healthy, cardiac services, things of that nature. In addition to these that I listed, there are numerous emerging nations that we can focus on. Our next big objective is differentiation. We want to continue to use differentiation to distinguish PepsiCo from the competitors. There's a continuous battle between Coca-Cola and Pepsi to secure that leading carbonated beverage industry, where one gets it in one country, the other gets it in another. And we want to be number one across the board. Helping us do that was the acquiring of Frito-Lay, which allowed us to differentiate ourselves from Pepsi-Cola in that we no longer just sold beverages, we now added on snack food industry, and we gained that leading share of the grocery store market. Also, we distinguished ourselves from Coca-Cola through offering of non-carbonated beverages such as teas, waters, coffee drinks, sports drinks, and juices. The market segments are telling us that they want these items, and we are being responsive. A lot of nations are switching over into a health-focused mentality, where in the past we were kind of a gluttonous society. So we're starting to switch, and market PepsiCo is changing with the market to include that market and capitalize on that market. The acquisition of Wimbill Dan and Quaker, again, differentiate us from our competitors. We reach more consumers in other segments. We're reaching those people who are looking for breakfast foods and healthier options, yogurt, nuts, oatmeal. And then, of course, our acquisition of Gatorade allowed us to step into the segments of populations who were looking for rehydration during sports events and things of that nature. And people use this when they're sick. So it has multi-purposes, and we are able to capitalize on that.
What a dynamite summary that was.
Okay, so we use a generic differentiation strategy. Our objectives are generic in order for us to gain market share through the ability to match products to the demand in the geographic and demographic areas that PepsiCo serves. Like Kanita and Kanisha said, we're going after all those different people of the population or within the population. PepsiCo does not seek a least cost objective. It's not feasible. It is expensive to do what PepsiCo does. The cost exist in the bottling plants, the bakeries, the trucking companies, and marketing activities such as mass media advertising. PepsiCo, of course, needs to charge prices that help to recoup some of those costs and allow for it to be allow for it to have acceptable profits. At the end of the day, they have to answer to their shareholders, and the plan of the shareholders is to have an increased profit. While it is not practical for PepsiCo to use a least cost approach, it should strive for low cost to the extent as possible. Okay. How does PepsiCo set itself apart from competitors? Broad differentiation. PepsiCo entered the market in 1898 as one of the first soft drink companies and has been at the top of the pack ever since. We saw in some of our previous slides, we are either number one or number two. We strive to be number one. Both the soft drink market and snack food market have reached a point of maturity, a mature stage. So again, we have to differentiate. We have to find ways to set our products apart from those of our competitors. And this is being done by PepsiCo through the marketing of our good for you, better for you, and fun for you strategy. Again, this is looking at, go ahead, sorry, next slide. In this slide, we're looking at the good for you. The good for you, we're meeting the needs of consumers who are looking for options that contain fruits, vegetables, whole grains, less sugar. You know, just a little something different from what we've been doing. The better for you, we're meeting the needs of consumers looking to reduce their fat intake, get more vegetables, things of that nature, and then looking for 0-calorie beverages. And then our fun for you, that's going to be the consumers who are looking to indulge in the original favorites. Next slide. Okay. Another part of our strategy is the power of one, which was adopted in 2011 by Indra Nooyi. And what this is PepsiCo realized that in 50% of the cases in the United States, when consumers reached for a salty snack, they were reaching for a carbonated beverage or beverage to go with it. So what Pepsi decided to do is that it wanted to create a bundle of beverages and snacks in grocery stores, convenience stores, things of that nature to respond to that need. In order to do this, they launched joint marketing programs with bottlers, grocery chains, convenience stores, and product divisions. Joint advertising and promotion campaigns were conducted in stores and media. And you may see this even today where, you know, buy a Pepsi and then you can save on a chocolate bar, or save on a bag of chips. Pepsi and Frito-Lay products are displayed together in the grocery aisles. Again, at the point of purchases, promotions at the stores, joint market research programs were conducted, and that's how we got the Power of One. The Power of One has accomplished alliances with many grocery store, convenience store chains, creating a competitive advantage against Coca-Cola. And you'll see too that Coca-Cola also followed suit, was a follower, and they started offering those promotions as well.
Woo! That was a bundle. I'm going to let you take just a quick breath. It was not launched by Indra Nooyi. She wasn't CEO yet. The guy who cooked this up was Indra's boss, Roger Enrico, who was the chairman was the CEO at the time. And he and Mrs. Nooyi cooked it up together, but you really summarized it very well. But at the end of the day, we got to give Roger the credit because he was the boss when they did this. And it was when the Power of One went into effect and these alliances were formed that Pepsi pushed Coke out of the #1 position in, or overtook Coke in its grocery store share. Pepsi, as a result of the Power of One, became more important to the grocery store chains than Coke did. And that really was historic. That pretty much changed everything. Power of One is given credit in consumer marketing as probably one of the most effective and imaginative strategies ever to come down the pike.
And this slide is just showing us our capabilities and resources. As defined, resources are assets of the company which can be tangible or intangible and are valuable to the organization. Capabilities refer to the company's resource coordinating skills and productive use. In our resource category, this is going to be our financial resources, physical resources, human resources. And one that I like to point out is reputation. If we tarnish our reputation, or if PepsiCo tarnishes its reputation, then it is going to have a direct effect on the bottom line. We've seen, if we're going to talk about this, we've seen some incidences of this with Sabra, the Sabra brand. On multiple occasions, it has been contaminated and pulled from store shelves. And then, the consumers who are loyal to that brand, they can't purchase it. And after so many times, they're not willing to purchase it in fear for becoming ill or something of that nature. Same thing goes with its marketing campaigns. And we can see this recently with the backlash received from the Kardashian. We can look at organizational structure, corporate management, R&D, marketing, sales, and then motivation. And Pepsi motivates its employees with a program that they call Performance with a Purpose and Real World Leadership Collaboration, where they bring people into the organization and then they coach them up into bigger roles. And then another thing is that they like to celebrate their employees who are doing really well. They have a big celebration annually to recognize those folks. Okay, next slide. And this is just a slide of some value-added functions, research and development. It is, it determines the demographics. It's innovation, labs, like we said earlier, we have medical doctors and nutritionists on staff. We move that chain right into our suppliers, sugar sweeteners, things of that nature, the things that it needs for us to make our beverages and foods. Again, and then we can come over to our concentrate producers, our bottling and bakeries, which we own, and then retail distribution. We also own the trucks that get them to the distribution centers, and then we partner with the grocery stores, food chains, things of that nature.
This is a really cute version of the value chain for this industry, and I'm impressed by it. And the ability to develop, to find and develop suppliers is a really important part. And the emphasis on R&D, especially at PepsiCo, makes such a big difference. But what a neat way to present a value chain.
You can use that graph later, but you have to credit it to me. I made that.
Oh, so I have to. I'm allowed to use it as long as I put Almeida down at the bottom. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, another strategy is our integration process. You can either use horizontal integration or vertical integration in order to diversify your product and create that differentiation. So PepsiCo uses horizontal integration. We use mergers and acquisitions within beverage and food industry to achieve a competitive advantage. The benefits of horizontal integration for PepsiCo, it increases product differentiation, which we've talked about. And we do that in our non-carbonated beverage products, our healthy snack food beverage products, and food products, breakfast foods, dairy food products. And it helps with rivalry reduction. We, again, are the #1 snack food company.
Every time you buy a competitor, there are fewer competitors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that reduces rivalry.
Yes. We use horizontal integration to enter into new markets. We've entered into China. PepsiCo is the #2 beverage company. 7-Up and Pepsi are top-selling brands there. Introduction of this one is something I didn't know. In 2015, Pepsi introduced a Pepsi cell phone. It's only sold in China, and it's called the Pepsi P1 cell phone. This actually is an unrelated integration, but it goes in there. We talked about Mexico, how they have a very large consumption rate. Mexico, according to Sumgrass, is the 4th largest consumer of carbonated beverages in the world, depending on the report that you read. Russia is an important nation that we entered, again, because first U.S. country allowed to operate. And then our purchase of Wim Bill Dan, and that was Europe's largest organization. So that helped us increase our footprint in Europe. And then India, #1 beverage company, generic term for carbonated beverage is Pepsi.
Just a couple of quick fill-in facts here to be sure everything's covered.
Okay.
A little known fact is that in Europe, 7-Up is a PepsiCo brand. It's not in the United States, but way back when, PepsiCo obtained a license and produces 7-Up in Europe. It's just an oddity of the industry. Maybe a little something extra should be mentioned about India, because we haven't touched on it very much yet. But Mrs. Nooyi, we remember, is Indian by birth and was able to appreciate the potential of India. And so again, we keep being reminded what a wise person she is, and she is just one of the most skillful chief executives in the world. But she sees the potential of India. So at one time, it was illegal for a company outside of India to own controlling interest of an Indian company. And so unlike American executives with their big egos, she went to India and negotiated a deal with the largest carbonated beverage manufacturer in India to do a joint venture and to essentially buy a minority interest. I think it was about 40%. Of course, the people who owned the company were delighted to take her money and get all that PepsiCo marketing talent to make the company grow even faster and to gain that much more of a competitive advantage. And then the law changed, and companies outside of India were allowed to control companies in India. And when that happened, Mrs. Nooyi went back and made those same owners an offer they could not refuse. They got so much money, they just died and went to heaven. And PepsiCo became the #1 brand in India. So both parties were delighted. The owners got more money than they could spend, and PepsiCo finally beat out Coca-Cola in an emerging nation. And while all this was going on, Coke wanted nothing to do with India because it couldn't have controlling interests of a company. But Indra Nooyi understood that that law was not going to be there forever, and she made the smart move. And consequently, it will be almost impossible to push PepsiCo out of first place in India. Rather an interesting story about intelligent management and innovative investments.
And this slide just represents some of the successful and unsuccessful acquisitions attempts by Pepsi Co. Frito-Lay, of course, Tropicana, Quaker, Aunt Jemima, Wildan, Gatorade, the Pepsi Bottling Group, and Pepsi Americas. Some of the unsuccessful acquisitions, and this is just on here so we can just compare. I know that it goes in the next section, but unsuccessful acquisitions for Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, KFC, Wilson Sporting Goods, North American Van Lines, and Lease Plan International. Next slide.
All unrelated.
Yes, all unrelated. So your options of, so we go into vertical integration. That's another option that can be used, but it was used unsuccessfully by PepsiCo. And there are two forms. You can go backward, and that is expanding into industries that produce inputs for an organization. So if we were to get into an organization that produced something that we use, forward expansion into industries that use, distribute, or sell PepsiCo products. Both degrees, again, spell disaster for PepsiCo. And those failed integration ventures, again, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah. Maybe you're going to tell us how PepsiCo got pushed out of this industry, but while this group of 3 quick service restaurant chains existed within PepsiCo, it was PepsiCo's largest line of business. And then what happened?
Essentially, Coca-Cola started approaching these companies and let them know that they were in essentially a deal with the devil. They were dealing with their competitors. They were in business with their competitors. So then,
they approached fast food companies other than these.
yes,
For instance, Burger King.
Burger King, McDonald's, things of that nature. And then, you know, again, like Kanita said, you buy what you're loyal to. So people started to buy. If Coca-Cola was sold only at McDonald's, then they would shop in McDonald's versus KFC, Taco Bell. So
Yeah,
that kind of helps.
essentially Coca-Cola went to, the one that I'm most familiar with is Burger King. Burger King served Pepsi-Cola, and Coca-Cola went to Burger King and said, hey, look, you know, you're feeding your competitor, and pointed out that even though they didn't sell burgers, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and Kentucky Fried were other places where people go for lunch. And it dawned on Burger King that they, in fact, were providing profit to their competitor because PepsiCo owned Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and Kentucky Fried. And therefore, they threw PepsiCo out and adopted Coca-Cola. And when that happened, PepsiCo's management came to the realization that they were competing with their customers, and that was not a very smart thing to do. And it wasn't long after that that PepsiCo spun off this group of fast food companies. Today it is called Yum Brands, and it's the largest restaurant chain in the world.
Okay, next slide. All right, so then you can, related diversification is a way for PepsiCo to sell complementing products other than carbonated beverages, snack foods, but within the beverage and food industry. Again, we have people who are saying that they want healthier options. The industry is showing us that soft drinks sales are declining because people are opting for different types of beverages, whether it be juices, water, protein shakes, dairy-based products. They are no longer drinking or consuming carbonated beverages in the manner that they used to. So Pepsi, of course, responding to its clients and, of course, being able to make a profit or seeing a place to profit, they in turn bought Wim Bill Dan. Again, that is a Russian dairy juice and yogurt company. So how else that's a great way to diversify, all from one company. They already sell juice, they already sell dairy, they already sell yogurt. So now you can capitalize on that. Same thing with Quaker, Tropicana, and Sabra. Again, they're not carbonated soft drinks, but they are within the beverage and food industry. Next slide, please. Unrelated diversification is when you go and seek out absolutely a market that has nothing to do with what you do. There is no commonality. And Pepsi did this and failed at it. They went out and they bought a moving trucking company. They bought sports store. They sold and leased cars. What that equates to is not successful Pepsi branding. Most of the time people didn't know this. Why would they know this? And what sense did it make? It made no sense in real life or to the bottom line. So Pepsi exited those markets and learned you stick to what you know. You know what you're good at and you continue to do it.
Yeah, this was, I've explained this to the Pepsi team. I'm just doing it for the folks in the audience. There was a time back in the 80s when American industry largely went nuts. There was a trend to form what are called conglomerates. And there were lots of big corporations in Fortune 500 like Gulf and Western, Universal Industries, and so forth, and they are all gone. Most are gone anyway. General Electric is still around, but they existed before this thing happened. Basically, the idea was to have a nice diversified portfolio of unrelated businesses so that at any one time if the market for one of them was down, the market trends for another would be up, and this was a hedging bet. And it just didn't fly. So here we have PepsiCo buying North American Van Lines moved me to New York City when I joined PepsiCo. It later bought Wilson Sporting Goods and LeasePlan International, not cars, Almeida, but rather trucks. They leased trucks, industrial trucks. Why? Who knows? It was just crazy. And after the 80s were over, American industry sobered up and got back to doing business in a more basic fashion. And PepsiCo got out of these ridiculous, unrelated acquisitions and no longer was a conglomerate.
Okay. And then we move into our Ansoff matrix model. And this describes what a company is doing to grow, what they need to do, what they're doing, and all that. It looks at your marketing segments, existing and new, across the sides and across the bottom. So we want to look at market penetration. What are we doing? Customer relationship management, that's a big thing. We want to make sure that we are advertising and marketing. We do this through, like Chris has said, hiring of celebrities and different avenues of getting our message to as many people as possible. We can do that through buying commercial slots in the Super Bowl, hiring Beyonce, Michael Jackson, things of that nature. And then our distribution. Our market development, we want to look at and use those economic indicators. Where can we go? Where is the best place that we can enter the market, but not only enter it, but have the potential to dominate it. And we've done that in India. We're doing that in Russia. We're doing that in Mexico, and we're moving into that spot in China. And that's where we need to focus so that we can continue to grow those markets. Our product development is key. That is why we have and we invest so heavily in our research and development. We have our own labs. We have those doctors on staff. And then we go into acquisitions and mergers. We want to acquire companies that have a solid footprint so that we can enter those markets, remove a competitor, enter into the market, and gain their market share, turn it into our market share. And we discussed those acquisitions.
Right.
And then product proliferation and diversification, we've discussed that as well. So.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we actually did clarify that, of course, Kentucky Fried, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell are vertical to the extent that we sold them a Pepsi-Cola product, right? So that's vertical. It was just not smart.
Yes. And then what we take away, again, is that in order to penetrate the market, we have to get our message and our brand out there in front of the people. And we do that, again, through media advertising, mass media advertising. We have to have good, solid, large campaigns to reach as many people as possible. And again, we take advantage of the celebrities. We assume that if a celebrity likes it, then the people following the celebrity will like it as well. And that will help us gain a bigger footprint. We want to purchase those time slots in big running shows and events so that we are blasting not only our customers to retain them, but future customers as well. And then we want to continue with the Power of One. We want to continue to market those beverage and food products together and allowing discounts or whatever the case may be for the bundling. Buy one, get one. Either way, we're boosting our bottom line. Market development, again, we want to pay attention to those emerging markets, and we want to make sure that we get in on the ones who are rising. We want to make sure that we are able to get into them, dominate them before other nations come in and build that brand, other companies come in and build that brand loyalty so that it's easier for us to establish and maintain versus fighting for that market share. And then, of course, product development, again, the acquisitions. And then we just want to keep our sales above that of Coca-Cola. We just want to gain that market share. And we want to make sure that our products are diversified. Anything else I need to add, Dr. Rick? We're good.
Okay.
And then the 4 basic strategies of our international strategy. There's 4 basic. We have an international strategy, I should say, and then there are 4 basic strategies. International or home replication, everything exactly the same everywhere you go. So if we offer Pepsi, we offer Pepsi. There it is. Or you can think of it as Dr. Roney said, Holiday Inn. You go to a Holiday Inn, it's the same here, there, everywhere. And that's a home replication. Global standardization. This is one of the ones that we use. We use global standardization and a multinational strategy, which comes together as a transnational strategy. Products are the same in all locations, but assets are placed where they are most economically beneficial to support the product being offered. So we want to locate our bakeries and plants in areas that are most beneficial to the company and the product that we sell. Multinational strategy, we offer different models in each country. That allows us to be responsive to the local market. Food and beverages are different in response to the cultures. We know that the tastes are different in the United States, China, and India. So we want to be able to cash in on that and be responsive to that, which then allows us to build brand loyalty. Transnational strategy, that is what we do. We use a hybrid form, and that's a combination of global standardization strategy and multinational strategy in order to respond to the local market. Sameness and standards of products and processes, but it caters to the markets and tastes. So you want to meet the needs of the market in which you serve, and that's what PepsiCo does.
Yeah. Okay. Bear in mind, these are the international strategies and that were covered in our chapter on international strategy. And as Almeda points out, these are the 4 basic approaches, and she's quite correct. We have a standardized approach at PepsiCo. The way you bottle something is the same no matter where you do it. The way you put it into cans is the same way. The way you mix up the meal to make a Frito or a Dorito, or the way you bake it, the way it goes down the conveyor line, all that's standardized, and we do it pretty much the same way. But what we serve in different countries is reflective of the tastes, and different products are more likely to be appreciated or preferred in some countries versus others. That's a cultural thing. And another thing that we pointed out earlier is that in India, there's a lot of what's called micro-marketing. You can't sell a 6-pack in India because people can't afford it. So they'll buy 1 bottle at a time, or and the packages of Frito will be sold 1 package at a time, where you'll buy a box of a half a dozen or more. But the whole idea in India is to make the product available to that 1.3 billion people. And even though each purchase may not be very large, when you multiply it by 1.3 billion, pretty soon it adds up to real money. And Indra knows that in the future, it's going to be worth a lot more, because more and more people can afford to buy a 6-pack.
Yes. And so we just summarize and draw some conclusions. And that is, if Pepsi's continued increase in the market depends on how well it takes advantage of the growing economies in emerging nations. Again, we must watch those economic indicators, look to what's going on, and then make moves and plans accordingly. Continue to seek out growth in these new nations through integration. Take advantage of, we have that horizontal integration in those acquisitions to take advantage of a footprint that an established business or competitor already has, and then that allows us to grow the market share there as well. We need to continue to be responsive to the needs of our customers through our product differentiation. That's our good for you campaign. And then we want to do what we do best. We don't want to expand into unregulated industries in which we have no distinctive competencies. If we don't know the market and we don't know what we're doing, let's stay where we do. We want to continue to build our brand in a way that best suits our product.
Poor Almeida. I don't know how long she's been going here, but she's really covered a lot. And I don't think she even took a drink. I'd be choking at this point. But poor lady, she must be exhausted. But she's covered a lot of ground really well. I think it looks like we're about to move into implementation. So let me put a little footnote here. I think that it's important to appreciate the challenge that PepsiCo has here. As Almeida and Kenita have pointed out, these markets are in many countries mature, and PepsiCo has all these different brands, and yet over time each of them becomes sort of a commodity, because if Coke introduces something new, it'll be followed by PepsiCo. If PepsiCo introduces something new, Coke will follow. And so at some point, the only way that you can continue to gain market share is to develop a new product, or in some other way differentiate yourself so that people will want to come get what you're offering, pay that little extra for it. But it's just extremely challenging in a market and in an industry that is this mature to keep coming up with these new products. And yet, as Almeida has pointed out, least cost is not the strategic objective here. Differentiation is. That's the nature of these industries. And so the one thing that PepsiCo has to continue to do is this product development thing. Keep developing these new products. And boy, that is a challenge, and they spend a mountain of money to do that. Who's next?
That would be me.
Who are you?
I'm Kenita.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. We're going into implementation. We're doing our major products and programs and our leadership change that we're going to suggest. Okay, so how do you provide superior efficiency, quality, innovation, and customer responsiveness? We want to improve our market position with our beverages. Right now, we're number 2. We need to move into number 1. How do we do that? Product line expansion. Our for you, better for you, and good for you. We're going to expand the healthier products through broadening our current product portfolio. Since carbonated drinks are so bad for women, how about we add more vitamin and antioxidant packed alternatives marketed directly to women? We can also tap into the health food retailers upswing. All those chains like our Fresh Markets and our Whole Foods, as they grow, we're going to grow with them. Go on to the next one. Okay, our major products and programs, we're going to continue our sports sponsorships. Do you know that Pepsi actually goes into high schools and sponsors high school programs all throughout the world, not just in the U.S.? They offer them free Gatorade. They offer them free, the little squeeze bottles that are always Gatorade. You see Gatorade everywhere.
Yeah.
They also have things going on at all the major sports things. Like this is actually what goes on at the Super Bowl. They have a Pepsi Sports Lounge, and it's got all these different Pepsi games where you win Pepsi prizes. I mean, sporting events, snack foods, and sodas, it goes hand in hand. Sporting events, sports drinks, hand in hand. Okay, we can go on to the next one. The next thing that we're going to suggest is organizational. We're going to say we think that we should restructure these 6 divisions and make them a little flatter. We have things going on all over the world, and we also have R&D going on all over the world. We have strategy going on all over the world. We have HR that is localized for every single division, which gives us high bureaucratic cost and bureaucratic cost, and the possibilities of agency problems is beyond imaginable. And of course, we have a lot of duplication of work. If we could flatten down some of these levels, we can avoid some of those problems, and we can help the bottom line. We can go on to the next one, unless you want to put something in, Dr. Rooney.
I just want to congratulate you on this slide and what you just said. Right on the button.
Next, we're going to offer zero-based budgeting. Let's tell them exactly what it'll cost for us to do just the bottom minimum line, and then let them pick and choose which initiatives they want, and that'll be a little bit better. And of course, we can re-engineer the production processes. We can implement some more of those TQMs into the value chain activities. Let's make them more lean, more cost effective for our productions and our bottling plants. Okay, next is our initiative, Performance with a Purpose, which Almeda already went over, so I'm not going to go back into it, where we're offering healthier products, where we're looking out for our planet, we're looking out for our people.
Whoop, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm done with that one.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
and then
it may be worth pointing out that Mrs. Newye has attached her own personal reputation to this one. She is an unusual lady in that she actually has a real sense of purpose, of social purpose. And when she came into this company, it basically made stuff that clogged people's arteries and gave them high blood pressure. And today, they still have those products, but they.
We should also go ahead and mention that Pepsi has won the Energy Star Award for the last 4 years running. So not only are we thinking about healthier products, but we're looking out for our planet.
Okay, good point.
For our people. Okay.
She has been very much a personal representative of this Performance with Purpose. Many social programs for women, for instance.
Yes.
A lot, and again, she sort of has put the corporate responsibility label on this corporation in a way that other CEOs have not.
Yes. And then the Power of One, we're going back to, it's a differentiation strategy where everyone wins with an alliance. Almeda's already gone over how Pepsi, if you're going to buy something, if you're going to buy a snack, you're also going to buy something to drink with it. So Pepsi went to their bottlers, they went to their retailers, they said, let's all work together. You can use our marketing, will help us all sell more. So the Power of One is just phenomenal. So we're going to keep doing that. And then let's see, for our last slide, we dedicate this to our fearless leader. She's the chairman and chief executive officer since October 1st of 2006. Currently, she's 61. She was born in October. And let's see, that makes her a Scorpio. Anyway, so she will have to retire at some point in time, and there is no known succession plan. However, each of her 6 divisions has a CEO, with Albert Carney being the CEO of Pepsi North America, and Mr. Chacron is the CEO of Frito-Lay North America. Now, the speculation is between those two, but as we learned through our lecture, if you want to change the trajectory of a company, sometimes it's better to look outside the company than just inside. So who knows exactly where Pepsi's going to go, but we know that it's coming.
Kenita has really put her finger on something here, and as a matter of fact, we even had a little conversation this afternoon about some of what she's presenting. But I'm so impressed by Kenita because in a number of places she has applied the principles of the course to what she presented in such a smooth way that you may not even notice it. But if you look back at lecture 4, you will recall what the options are for replacing an incumbent CEO. And you may recall that there's that curve where you got two options. You can stay on the curve by promoting from within inside and not ruffling, not creating a lot of waves, or you can get somebody from the outside and start that growth trajectory all over again. And it's if you look at Apple today, Apple is kind of a representation of what can happen if you just stay with the same program, but you don't have somebody who is quite that forceful, that charismatic as a Steve Jobs. And we see this so often. So what do you do to find a successor to Indra Nooyi? And Kenita has really nailed the issue here. There are a lot of people at PepsiCo who think there ought to be somebody promoted from within, but there are a lot of management professors, including Kenita, who think that we're going to have to really think that thing over, because it's going to be very hard for somebody on the inside to follow that act. And that's an issue. There's no formula for this. It's an issue. And how the issue is resolved will be a reflection on just how competent PepsiCo's board of directors is. And that's it.
Yes, so we're all ready for questions.
That it? You want to stop sharing?
Yes.
We want to bring the team back? Okay. Here we all are. Let's see how many are still here. Not as many as there were when we started. And this one,
Keep it short.
well, you know what? It's turned out to be the same length of time as the others, as the first two. A little shorter because we started 15 minutes late. So you guys are the record holder now. You got done, in spite of all my interruptions, faster than the others. Okay, do we have any questions from those of you who are remaining? There aren't many. There's Mary and Jamie. Let's see, Steele is still with us. Hiya, Steele. And Mark is here. So we've still got some hangers on. And Professor Ward is also with us tonight. Questions, anyone? Comments? Come on, Mark, you do it every time.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was very interesting that we picked up on the fact that the CEO is 61 years old and there's no apparent succession plan, which is going to be paramount in the future of this company. And in your team's review, was there any indication of which way the board was leaning?
No, there isn't, because I actually went out and searched and hunted and everything else for any type of indication as to which way they were going. Now, as far as market speculators, they seem to think that it's going to be Mr. Carey, who is over the North America beverage, but I just don't think so. I don't think that that's the way they're going to go. I mean, he's a CEO right now in his own right. If they continue the way that they're going, then he can continue to be the CEO, and they can just bring in someone else. But we won't know until they announce. But they're keeping it pretty close to the cuff. But something tells me they have to be working on it.
I would suspect so. And that if you think about the CEO and the management team, that certainly is a critical success factor. But equally important, it could be a critical failure factor if not having a succession plan in place.
Yes.
My other comment is that I thought that the use of your charts and your figures was absolutely phenomenal to me. And I really enjoyed the one that had the people and the amount of water consumption.
Thank you.
I love that. And I was wondering, where did you get it?
I found it online. I think it was let me look and see. I can tell you exactly where I found it from.
That was cute.
Thank you.
It is.
I found it interesting, especially for bottled water. Think about all those bottles that are going into all of our landfills. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
It is. And Pepsi does, they're not in the recycling business that I'm aware of.
No.
Yeah.
What could be a potential alliance they could make to reduce cost.
I wonder if that's an odd form of vertical integration. Great questions, Professor.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Further on your question about succession, if we look at PepsiCo's track record, there are a couple of facts that we could take into consideration. One is that Mrs. Nguyen herself was a promotion from within, but she was recruited after a very salutary campaign, including working for firms like Asea Brown Bovary and Boston Consulting Group. So she was well established, and they brought her in for strategic planning. Another fact is that each of PepsiCo's CEOs, and there's been about 7 of them, each one of them has introduced something new. For instance, it was Enrico that gave him the power of one. Donald Kendall is the one that took him to Russia, and so forth. But each one of these CEOs has put a different spin on the bottle. And the real question is there somebody like a Nguyen that the board already has brought in and is preparing for that succession? If Indra Nooyi had just dropped into the saddle right off the bat, it's unlikely that she could have accomplished all that she has. But because she worked with these formative CEOs so closely, she became the most qualified, most competent CEO, even though there were senior vice presidents senior to her. The board chose her, which says to me that the board had figured out already, although nobody else may have known it, that she was going to be the next CEO someday. And it could be that there's somebody that's in the hothouse right now being cultivated, and it may not be either of these two that Kenita doubts are going to be the one.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it would have been interesting to watch her in meetings and see the type of questions that she was asking before she ever became the CEO. Because I would anticipate someone who was asking insightful questions that expanded the discussion much further than what their sphere of influence was, or the type of people. And something that we need to consider in our own careers is what I consider exercise your voice. Bring your experience and expertise to the table. Don't rob the organization of it. It's been interesting to see what type of questions and communication she was having before she ever got there, which would say, hey, I'm the next person you need to be considering.
Yeah. Well, just to finish this off, credit to Kenita again, because, I think we've agreed that this is a strategic issue, and she just put her finger right on it. So we don't neglect the other members of the team. I think we've had a whole lot of real good stuff in this presentation. When Almeida was going through these 2 long sessions of hers, especially that last one, I was getting exhausted for her. That was a long one, and she really covered it well. So congratulations to this team for a job well done.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. Is there anything else that anybody in the audience wants to say? Anybody on the team want to say anything?
Thank you all for sticking with us.
What?
I said thank you all for sticking with us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now don't forget that we've had the change in the schedule. We're gonna have a session tomorrow night on Wednesday. That's different from what we put out initially. We're gonna have Wednesday, and then we skip Thursday, and we meet on Friday. Right? Everybody get that bulletin?
Yes.
Okay. That means others did too.
Do we have to answer the discussion questions about our presentation?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the only way you can get your grade up. I mean, if you can't do well on this one, I'm a little worried about it. This is the way you pack your grade.
Okay.
Right? Everybody gets a shot to hit a winner. All right. Are we pretty much there then?
Yes.
All right, then thank you all. Wait, I'm going to stop this recording first thing. If I don't do that, I'll regret it.